Welcome back to the lab. We know that our board didn't smoke when it turned on. Now what? Let's talk about what happened to transform that board that didn't smoke into a working prototype. What happened, primarily, is a lot of testing. This testing is meant to prove that the circuit is behaving as the simulations suggest it should. This testing helps us to find which microcontroller vendor would work best for our application. This testing helps us to find bugs or errors in the hardware, which is really exciting. But as we discussed in the previous video, nearly all of that footage was left either uncaptured due to forgetting to get out the camera or lost. I'm still pretty new here, okay? We'll get better. Thankfully, I found a few photos and videos that were captured on my phone while I worked. The quality isn't great, but I think we can still use these to tell our story. Our inverter then. What exactly is it? This is the output stage of a double conversion uninterruptible power supply, or UPS. It's designed to convert a few hundred watts, in this case 700. It converts this power from DC, like what a battery can supply, to AC, which is what most electronics take in from the wall. In this case, ours is designed to generate pure sine waves, like this. Some inverters generate modified or approximated sine waves, which usually look like this. What you see in this picture is the output filter, bulk capacitance, and switching FETs. These are used to chop up the DC, condition the power, and then prevent high frequency energy from reaching the load. This is important, and it prevents excessive power dissipation in some supplies. Not all power bricks, like this one, are affected by modified sine waves, but others could be completely destroyed. To design our inverter so we don't need to worry about destroying things with dirty power, we put in a little extra effort to make sure the power coming out of this board is truly a sine wave. Swinging the board around, we can see a side view featuring where the headers are installed for a microcontroller. This allows that controller to get all of the information it needs to keep the system under control. There are two headers here, one for 5 volt tolerant micros and one for 3.3 volt tolerant micros. Diving in a little deeper, this next image is one that I took at my desk. Before connecting the microcontroller to the inverter, I wanted to make sure that the firmware was actually behaving correctly. When we do this before attaching it to the board, this allows us to test the firmware in an isolated, controlled environment. This is critical because if we're testing our firmware and the hardware both at the same time and neither are untested, if something goes wrong, we don't know where to start debugging. By doing some preliminary checks in the firmware, by controlling the inputs and monitoring the outputs, we'll know that there's at least some confidence that that's working correctly. If we see an issue down the road, we'll know it's probably the hardware. So again, we simulated those inputs, the analog inputs, with two synchronized waveform generators, then monitored the PWM outputs with the oscilloscope. This was all with my Analog Discovery, great piece of equipment for beginners. This allowed us to make sure that the control system and PWM generator were both working correctly together. In this case, the first attempt had mixed success, since every time we updated the PWM value, it interrupts the timer counter. This causes some discontinuities, and it's pretty gross. After some tweaking, though, this glitchiness was mostly removed. The PWM generation glitchiness that you see here is a big part of why we moved away from the STM32 micro, which we were using here, and then found the PSOC part from Cypress, where it was much easier to implement. This STM part required so much tinkering to get to this point that I completely lost faith in the ecosystem like we talked about before. To drive this point home further, I could develop firmware to run this inverter on both an Arduino, like you saw in the previous video, and the PSOC board that we used in the end, in less time than it took to get this PWM working on the STM32 part. Do I sound salty yet? I feel like I sound pretty salty. Let's move on. We've had some issues with the 3.3 volt header on the proof of concept board. To successfully interface with the inverter, we need to use a logic level translator IC. You can see that on the breadboard in this picture. It's just a generic one off Amazon. These are dirt cheap and work great. We keep a stock of general purpose items like this in the shop, and you probably should too. Little issues like logic level shifting in early prototypes like this can really slow a person down without the right equipment on hand. Just grab one out of the shelf, good to go. This next picture shows how the output voltage measurements were taken, directly on the output of the board with two scope channels. These are two single-ended measurements that are mathematically compared in the scope to measure the differential output voltage. There are diff probes that can make this measurement natively, but money. Notice the ground lead from the oscilloscope clipping onto the screw, which is connected to ground. This helps to tightly couple ground of the board with ground of the scope. This coupling typically helps to keep noise down in measured signals, but I noticed that some of the return currents from the inverter output stage, that is, were coupling back through the scope, throwing off our measurements by a few millivolts. We'll be able to get a better view of the output voltage waveform under load once we get isolation properly implemented. This is just going to be an issue in all of our measurements, like you were saying before, and it really isn't as bad as it looks. It's that current coming back through the scope. The next image is where things get really interesting. Our first attempt at a sine wave. You can see the PWM glitches that we saw in those oscilloscope captures, coupling through the filter and then messing everything up in our waveform. But all things considered, this is pretty good. Obviously, we need to find a way to eliminate discontinuities in the PWM generation, and pretty good has never really been good enough for me. So after tuning things further and just a little bit of tinkering, you can see the blue mathematical combination of the two output voltage channels, and it looks pretty good. This is our second attempt at making a sinusoidal sine wave. This leads me to the elephant in the room. What the heck is going on with these waveforms? Square wave, half sine wave? Yeah, our firmware generates a square wave and two half sine waves to create a sinusoid with an amplitude of twice the DC bus voltage. Little strange, but it works on the bench and in Mathland. It's fine, but there is a better way. Not to mention that in the real world, there are a couple pretty interesting things that pop up when generating a sine wave this way. The common mode voltage of our AC waveform changes every half cycle. Not only does that cause annoying buzzing in the output ceramic caps, it makes the output waveform look absolutely crazy after being passed through a transformer. When we connected our inverter to a transformer and stepped up the voltage a bit, yeah, that's not exactly what I would call ideal. It's actually pretty funny, and it does make sense. I believe this was taken when a step-up transformer was used, which is not an isolated transformer. This is actually two series windings, where power is applied between the center tap and the bottom. Power is then removed from the top and bottom, so the output voltage is effectively doubled. 1 times the voltage across the lower winding, and then 1 times the voltage across the upper winding due to the magnetic coupling. So this measurement was taken on the output side of that transformer, and here's what the primary looked like. Again, not exactly what I would call ideal. Notice that kind of ramping on the square wave, where it should be a sharp edge. A replacement to this approach was to utilize the complementary PWM output of the timer counter. This causes the hardware to generate two waveforms that are always 180 degrees out of phase by design. If we generate a sinusoid, a complementary one is automatically generated on the other output due to the complementary nature. And having two sine waves instead of one sine wave and a square wave, switching noise is substantially reduced on the output. Audible noise was also substantially reduced. Now this is next capture showing the step-up transformer again, and the next picture is taken right on the output leads of the proof of concept inverter. Pretty clean, right? This is actually a clean enough output waveform that I would have no issues with connecting this to any equipment I own. And that's exactly what I intend to do once we can generate 120 volts AC. Before we close this out, I want to share the only surviving footage of me actually interacting with a circuit and testing it live. Check this out. This is my terrible sine wave and my light bulb that I'm punishing. There's the butte. Just closed my control loop, which basically means that when the controller thinks output voltage, output current. When the controller thinks, basically the controller's trying to regulate to 30 volts, plus or minus 5. It's trying to regulate within 5 volts of each of the steps of that approximated sine wave. And I know that it's actually trying because when I unplug one of the voltage sense wires, it gets angry. And it basically cranks that up to the maximum power it can, which is a square wave. And I plug the sense back in, and it comes back down to the sine wave. Looking at how that looks on there. Basically just pumps out as much voltage as the controller allows and cooks the load. Then on the light bulb, looks like that, and then this is the normal level, not up to 120 volts yet. This is like 40, but yeah. I don't know, that's it. See ya. That's it, indeed. Awesome stuff. That was captured back when we were still generating an approximated sine wave. Remember that from before. But the control system evolved to allow for pure sine wave generation before our work was done. The pure sine wave is what we have featured in those pictures before. The ability to generate pure sine waves with higher resolution was another thing that we got when we switched from STM32 to the PSOC Micro for our design. And that's really the biggest hitter. Software development time is huge, but being able to generate that pure sine wave is absolutely critical. Well, unfortunately that's all the footage we have from the assembly and testing of this prototype, but we learned a lot from this process and we'll capture more of this process next time around. Stick around for our future videos where we'll discuss how this prototype was destroyed and walk through the changes that we need to make in the next version of this design to make it more robust. I think that sine waves are great. If you think this UPS project is cool, let me know by hitting the like button on this video, subscribing to the channel, or leaving a comment letting us know what you enjoyed. Most of all, I hope that you learned something great today, and I hope to see you again soon. Thanks for watching EE for Everyone, and thank you for staying till the end. Bye!